everybody, I'm Courtney with Missouri Star Quilt Company, and I'm here today to show you how to make this really great zip and roll bag. It has little ties, and you unroll it, and you can see here we've got the lining. We put a little bit of iron-on vinyl there so it can you can wipe it off. We have pockets in here that you can use for just about anything. You can put makeup brushes in here, you can put art supplies, or most importantly, you can put your quilt supplies when you're going to class, rotary cutter, scissors, whatever you wish. And then we have this great little zipper bag at the end. You can pull this off and take it with you. It'd be great for pins, clips, whatever you'd like. So let's go over the supply list and we'll get you started. For your supplies, you are going to need 4 fat quarters, some iron-on vinyl, iron-on fusible Bosal one-sided, some hook and loop tape, and most importantly, you'll need one of our great 14-inch zippers. So let's get started. The first thing you'll want to do is you're going to get your outside fabric. This is what I chose for my outside fabric. You are going to cut a 17.5 by 10-inch piece for pocket, and we are going to cut a 10 by 18-inch piece for the outside. So this is my 10-inch by 18-inch piece for my outside. Lay it on a piece of batting, and then you're going to quilt it. This is a good time to have fun with machine quilting. It's a great small piece, have a little, just play. I don't let myself play enough, and I bet you don't either. So play on this little piece. I just did a diagonal grid here. At this point, what I'm going to do is I am going to just trim off the batting even with the fabric. I don't want to trim it down to my true to size yet because I'm going to show you why in a minute. So here's my little piece that I trimmed just down to the batting. It's all ready to go. Now we're going to have our lining piece. Our lining piece is cut 9.5 by 17.5, and now we're going to cut a piece of vinyl that same size, and I'm going to show you how to use this iron-on vinyl. I had never used it before, and I was a little hesitant because I wasn't familiar with the product, but it is really fabulous. It went through my needle just fine in my machine, and I really liked it. So what you're going to do, it's got this great grid on here too, so that helps when you're cutting. The vinyl is attached to this paper sheet. It's like opening a bag at the vegetable part of the grocery store, right? And you can feel it's got sticky on one side. You're going to peel that paper off. Do not lose the paper. That's going to come in handy here in a minute. And you're going to lay this down, sticky side down, on your vinyl, or on your lining piece. Line it up as best you can. Now we're going to take it to our iron. Read the directions. On the directions it says to turn your iron down to about half the heat that it usually has. Now I'm going to place this paper back on top of the vinyl. This is very important. If you don't place the paper, you're going to have a mess. So we're going to iron in place for about 8 seconds on each part of your lining. Do not go off the paper. Okay. And you can smell it as it gets a little warm. That's okay. Then you're going to just peel that paper off. You can see how shiny it got where it's iron there. And now we're going to do the other side. And I will tell you, when it's heated up, it does get very flimsy, but as it cools, it kind of stiffens back up again. So don't be surprised by that. Then once you're done with the 8 seconds, you'll turn it over and you iron 4 seconds on the back side. Again, I'm making sure I'm staying in place. Hand on the handle there. So we've got our lining here all nice and fused, got the vinyl on it. Now we're going to make our pocket. Our pocket we are going to make 17.5 inches by 10 inches, and I decided to use my outer fabric for the pocket. Here's our pocket piece. I ironed it in half, that lengthwise. Then I went ahead, and I like to top stitch along the top of my pocket. It's kind of hard to see, but I have just about 1/8 of an inch down. I like to give it a nice little finished edge. Then I drew some pocket lines with I can just rub that marker off, use any kind of pencil you like. And then once I got down to the end of the pocket that's going to be off to the left, I left about a 5-inch pocket. I wanted to leave that for some of my bigger items. If I had some makeup wipes or a wider item that wouldn't fit in the smaller pockets, I can stick it there. Now, what we went ahead and did was, for our Velcro, I came in 2 inches, you see that on the mat, and I cut my 4-inch Velcro, only the hook side, I cut it in half to about 2 inches. So I went ahead and top stitched that Velcro right on top of my pocket, just so it's through that one side. If I were to wait and I would have done that when I added it to the lining, then that pocket would have become useless. So I just wanted to do it to the pocket. Then I laid my pocket. My pocket now is on the top of my lining. I went ahead and my other piece of Velcro that's on the back side, the hook and loop tape, I stitched that down to just my lining right there, so it's ready to go. Then once I laid this on, I went ahead and top stitched my pocket just to baste it in place to the lining so it doesn't go anywhere. This vinyl is a little slippy, I will tell you that, so I did use more pins than I normally would. And another tip is, if you find it moving too much, go ahead and put your walking foot on your machine if you have one, and that might help with that moving. Once I stitched around the edge, then I went back and stitched my pockets in place. I started at the bottom and worked my way up at the top, and then I back stitched a little bit at the top to give that pocket a little bit extra help at the top, because that's where it's going to get the most stress. So I just started at the bottom, went up top, back stitched, and did all my pockets and got those in place. Okay, now we're ready to lay it with our quilted front. Here's my quilted front that I trimmed just even with the end of the fabric. Now I'm going to lay this on the top. And you'll see it's smaller. That's great, because now I don't have to be so particular when I line it up, okay? We're gonna pin this all together, then I'm gonna take it to the machine and trim it all up nice and neat. I'm going to use a little bit longer stitch length on my machine. But first I'm going to make sure that it's in the straight stitch length so I don't break a nail. There we go. If you see, I'm just barely stitching this down. I don't want to come into the seam allowance. Alrighty, so here we go. We're all set. It's all layered and stitched together. Now we just need to trim that off. And really at this point, it doesn't matter what size this is. It can be whatever size you want. So don't worry about keeping it to any certain dimensions at this point. Keep in mind, if you have tools, if you're a knitter and want to use this for knitting needles, just make your bag taller. Make it your own. You do want to make sure you're going straight, so I just kind of use my cutting mat as a reference here. This looks all pretty. Flip it over, make sure everything looks good, looks great. Alrighty, now we're ready to make our ties. So you need 2 ties that are 1.5 inches wide. Okay, so I cut, one is 14 inches, one is 17. And I'll show you how to do one. Let's go to this ironing station. I'm gonna crank that heat up a little bit. We're gonna iron this in half. We open it up and then we iron into the middle. Watch your fingers when you're ironing, especially if you're ironing in the same spot on your ironing mat. I do that too many times. I get in a hurry and don't let it cool. And yikes. Okay, so then let's fold this in half. So you made a little tiny binding strip. Basically. And on one end, go ahead and come back. We're gonna make the little end, we're gonna do a finished edge. So go ahead and iron that down a little, about 1/4 inch. And then refold this over. All right, so you have your 2 ties here. And then I took mine to the machine, and you want to top stitch. I top stitched down either side of the long sides just to make them nice and pretty. Then you're going to take your bag, you're going to flip it over and place your ties at this end of your bag. So it's going to be opposite end of your Velcro, okay? Place them here. We're going to base those in place just to hold them until we get the binding on. All right, so now we are ready for binding. You cut 4 2.5 inch strips out of your fabric for binding. I am not going to go over binding with you. You guys all know how to bind. I did machine stitch all my binding. Of course, hand stitch if you like. That's totally up to you. It makes no difference. I stitched on mine, I stitched on the inside, brought it around to the outside, and then top stitched it from the outside. But you do whatever you like. Make sure when you go around where your ties are, you don't catch your ties, okay? Once that's done, your outside of your bag is done. Once your binding is done, the outside of the bag is done. Let's sew our little zipper bag. Okay, for our zipper bag, we are going to need 2 pieces of fabric that are 8 by 10 and your piece of Bosal that's 8 by 10. I went ahead, we already know how to use that vinyl. I went ahead and fused an 8 by 10 piece of vinyl to my lining side of my bag. And on the outside of the bag, that's what I'm going to fuse to my Bosal. Okay, the Bosal is just one-sided, this one. I didn't want it two-sided because I didn't want to iron the backside with the vinyl on the backside. So I just did the one side, okay? And you can definitely feel This side is softer, and then this side's got a little bit of texture to it. That's your iron side, okay? So we're just going to lay your piece right on there, your outside. I'm just gonna, my fabric moved a little there, no big deal. That's gonna be in the seam, but I'm gonna go ahead and trim that up a little bit. Okay. Now, we'll lay our lining right sides together with our bag. Let's go ahead and pin that. That's very slippy under there. You could also use your binding clips if you like binding clips. The pins really go through this vinyl very easily. I'm very happy with this vinyl. It was really the first time I've used it. I kind of love it. Now let's go to the machine and we're going to sew up each side of our bag. I am going to back stitch at either end because we're going to have to turn this right sides out. Okay, just reach in and grab this. Turn the right side out. I'm just going to go with that top where the seam is. I'm just going to press that in place because, again, I don't want to hit it with the iron. You could hit it with the iron if you still have your paper left from when we fused it. You probably could hit it and just get it a nice press, but I just found finger pressing this part is okay. Okay, now we need to put on our hook and loop tape. So let's measure this. Our little bag is 7.5. So about 3 3/4 is our halfway point. My Velcro right in the middle. It'll be fuzzy side up. Make sure you get the fuzzy side up. Center it. You can mark this. I would suggest marking it with some kind of a pencil. It's not going to really matter. And you're going to take it to the machine and we're going to stitch down this Velcro. And I would go ahead and pin it. This is a little tricky to get through the Bosal, but okay. And I will tell you, so our Velcro is down. I will tell you to make sure that you put it on the outside of your bag, not the inside of your bag, because I've done that too. So now that we've turned that right side out, we've got our Velcro in, we're ready to put our zipper in. These zippers are great. They're exclusive to Missouri Star. They're our fancy zips. So we can finish the edges of our project and just top stitch these zippers right on. It makes zipper insertion so easy. This is a little cute one. It has little scissors on it. It's so cute. So I'll show you how to put the zipper in. Don't be afraid of the zipper, I promise. So I always fold this over. Make sure I'm looking at the right side of my bag. And then I'm going to lay my zipper on top if it behaves here. And when I go to put my zipper in, I'm gonna pull that under a little bit. When it's laying here, that lining wants to come to the front, but I want that to the back, but I'll work with that when I'm ready to pin my zipper on. So again, I've got, doesn't matter if your pull's at the top or bottom, I have it at the bottom. You are going to want to leave as much room as you can at the bottom of the zipper, because once we put on the other side, it gets kind of tricky. It might get tricky down if we don't have that zipper, that room there. So I'm going to go as pretty close as I can with my stop up at the top, and then leave as much room as I can at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and pin that on. Again, I'm going to roll that Velcro or the lining to the back. And then when I'm pinning the zipper on, I'm putting those teeth pretty close to the edge there, and this bag is just going to run just like that with those teeth hanging out. Let's go to the machine. Now I've got a regular 1/4 inch foot in here. If you've got a zipper foot, use it great. If not, you can just use your 1/4 inch foot. I'm right up there next to my zipper, and I'm ready to go. I didn't backstitch, no need to backstitch. I did put a new needle in, as I'm going through quite a few layers. You might want to think about that if you've got an older needle in there. But the Bosal and the vinyl, it's just sewing through like butter. It's very nice. Don't have to worry. Alrighty, so I have my one side on. I'm ready to add my other side. Do this so it behaves. Going to close my zipper. That way I know I will get good placement on my bag. You want to make sure that your top and your bottoms are lined up real nice and pretty. Okay. For now, since I want them, I'm going to kind of baste with my pins, I guess. So I'm just going to kind of pin this in a couple places. Now I can undo my zipper. All right. And now I'm going to go back through and pin it. You could leave your pins in going the other way. I am such a creature of habit, however, and I am afraid that I might sew over one of those pins. And I did that one time, and my machine was in the shop for 2 weeks, and I wanted to cry because I missed my machine. So don't want to be sewn over pins. Okay. Now we only want to pull up our zipper about halfway. Don't forget to turn your bag inside out. I'm gonna go a little further so I can get that. There we go. Okay, there we have our pretty little bag ends. Okay, now all we have to do, you want to make sure that the zipper's kind of centered in the middle. You don't want it to look like that. You want it to look like that. Okay. You can measure that or eyeball it, whichever you prefer. Okay. And now we're going to sew across either end of the short seams here. That's why you want to make sure your zipper bag, I'm going to undo this zipper actually a little bit more. You want to make sure you leave a hole because we're about to enclose the whole thing with thread. So, okay. This might be a good place if you have any kind of the little clips. Those are good here. The pins are working just fine. And I'm going to sew back and forth just once, and then once I get to the zipper, I'll probably go over that a couple times just to secure that a little bit more. You want those teeth nice and flat. If you're afraid, if this is just on our zippers, they're fine to sew over. I sewed over these plenty of times, nothing happened. You want to make sure if you're a little leery, just use your hand wheel on your machine and go real slow over that zipper, but I really didn't have any trouble. And I am going to back stitch at either end of this. Hand wheel over. All right, so there we stitched either end of the bag. We're just gonna trim this zipper right off, even. Now we're ready to box our corners, and that can always be a little scary. It is not scary, I promise. So all you're going to do is get the end of your bag and smush it into a triangle. That's it. Then you're gonna take it back to the sewing machine. You can, if you need to, mark down about 3/4 of an inch down from the tip, and that's where you're going to sew. I found and measured on my machine plate where that 3/4 inch is on my machine. You can also mark that with a little piece of tape or something, so I don't have to write on the vinyl. I mean, you could write on it, doesn't make any difference, but I just thought it was easier just to take it right to my machine and just sew right across. And at this point, you can trim that off and then zigzag it to finish it, or you can leave it as is, or you can trim it and not zigzag it. That's totally up to you. So you're going to do that to all 4 corners. Again, just pull it out so it makes a triangle. making sure that your seam is in the middle. Take it to your machine, sew across. Do that to all 4 corners. Flip your bag right side out, and voila! There's your little zipper bag that'll go right inside your zip and roll pouch. You are ready to go on the road. And then you can roll it up, your little ties will tie it, and you're all finished. I really had fun making these. I am going to make a bunch, so any friends, look out, you know what you're getting for Christmas this year. Thank you for joining us today on how to make this great zip and roll bag. All of the information about the products we used and the pattern are in the description below. Have a great day.
We hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you are not already part of the Missouri Star Quilt family, you can hit the subscribe button below so you won't miss a thing. And if you click that bell, it'll notify you every time a new tutorial comes out. See you next Friday.